It was the eve of Independence Day, and the air in Kingston was thick with a peculiar blend of anticipation and unease. The usual vibrant hum of the city, typically a symphony of reggae beats and lively chatter, felt muted, almost strained. I, Marcus, a young historian with an insatiable hunger for the untold narratives of my homeland, found myself drawn to the older, quieter parts of town, away from the boisterous preparations for the celebrations. My grandmother, a woman whose eyes held the wisdom of generations, had always warned me about the thinning veil on nights like these, when the past bled into the present, and the spirits of old walked among the living. I was on a personal quest, a pilgrimage of sorts, to document the oral histories of independence, not the grand speeches and official parades, but the whispers, the fears, the forgotten sacrifices that paved the way for our freedom. My journey led me to an ancient crumbling tenement yard, its walls scarred with the passage of time, its windows like vacant eyes staring into the twilight. This was the home of Miss Adina, a centenarian whose memory was a living archive of Jamaica's tumultuous past. She was known to possess a second sight, a gift that allowed her to perceive the unseen, to converse with the duppies that lingered in the shadows. As I approached her door, a chill unnatural for the tropical evening snaked its way up my spine. The usual cacophony of crickets and nightbirds was conspicuously absent, replaced by an unsettling silence that pressed in on my eardrums. A faint, sweet scent like overripe mangoes and damp earth hung heavy in the air, a smell I had come to associate with the presence of the otherworldly. I knocked, my knuckles rapping against the weathered wood, the sound echoing with an eerie finality. The door creaked open, revealing Miss Adina, her face a roadmap of wrinkles. Her eyes, though clouded with age, held a piercing intensity. "Marcus, mi chili, I've been expecting you. The spirits stay restless tonight. Independence, they say, a time for remembering, but some things, they best left buried." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, but my historian's curiosity, a potent and often reckless force, propelled me forward. I stepped into her dimly lit room, the air within even heavier than outside, laden with the scent of old wood, dried herbs, and something else, something metallic and cold, like distant rain on rusted iron. The room was a sanctuary of the past, filled with antique furniture, faded photographs, and an altar adorned with candles, fresh flowers, and offerings of fruit. It was a space where the living and the dead converged, where the veil between worlds was indeed thin. They say freedom come easy, Marcus, but freedom, it got a price paid in blood, in tears, in souls that never find rest. On this night, when the whole island celebrate, the duppies, they come out. They walk the same paths they walked in life. They seek the justice they never got, the peace they never found. I pulled out my notebook, my hand trembling slightly as I poised my pen. "Miss Adina, can you tell me about them? The duppies of independence." The air grew colder, and the scent of damp earth intensified, as if the very ground beneath us was stirring, awakening to the stories about to be told. The candles on the altar flickered wildly, casting dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and contort, taking on fleeting, spectral forms. I gripped my pen tighter, a strange mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through me. I was ready to listen, ready to face the fading echoes of freedom, even if it meant confronting the restless spirits that still haunted the land. This was not just history. This was a living, breathing testament to the sacrifices made and the shadows they cast upon our celebrated independence. The true horror I was beginning to understand lay not just in the malevolent spirits, but in the unresolved pain that tethered them to this world. A pain that resurfaced with chilling intensity on the very day we celebrated our liberation. And as Miss Adina began to speak, her voice weaving a tapestry of forgotten tragedies, I knew this Independence Day would be unlike any other. It would be a night of reckoning, a night when the past refused to stay buried, and the duppies of Jamaica demanded their due. The celebration outside, with its fireworks and music, felt like a flimsy facade, barely concealing the ancient simmering darkness that lay beneath. I could almost hear the faint mournful wails carried on the wind, a chorus of spectral voices joining Miss Adina's, each one a testament to a freedom that was not truly free for all. And I, Marcus, was now inextricably bound to their stories, a reluctant witness to the spectral parade of Jamaica's haunted past. The night was young, and the duppies were just beginning their dance. Miss Adina's voice, once a dry rustle, now took on a resonant quality, as if it were no longer entirely her own, but a conduit for the voices of the past. Day come, Marcus, the ones who never saw the dawn of freedom, the ones who died in chains, or with the lash still fresh on their backs. They come, not for vengeance, not always, but for recognition, for the world to know that their freedom was bought with their very souls. She spoke of the sugar-cane fields, vast green oceans that had swallowed countless lives, where the sun beat down with a merciless intensity, and the air was thick with the cries of the enslaved. She described how, on the eve of independence, the air above these fields would shimmer, not with heat, but with the restless energy of those who had toiled and perished there. I could almost feel the phantom sting of the whip, the burning ache in my muscles, the suffocating despair of a life without hope. The metallic scent in the room grew stronger, now tinged with the sickly sweet smell of molasses and old blood. The rolling calf, that one he a wicked spirit, a man who was cruel in life, a butcher who cheated and stole, now bound to the earth as a beast of fire and chain. On Independence Night, when the drums beat loud and the people dance, he rolls through the villages, his chains clanking a mournful rhythm, looking for souls to drag back to the darkness. He especially liked the ones who forget to struggle, the ones who take freedom for granted. I remembered the stories of the rolling calf, tales told around bonfires on cool nights, meant to scare children into obedience. But hearing it from Miss Adina, with the candles flickering and the oppressive silence of the night pressing in, it was no longer a children's story. It was a living, breathing terror. I imagined the monstrous, fiery beast, its eyes glowing embers, its chains rattling a death knell as it pursued its victims. The thought sent a cold sweat trickling down my back. She hate the joy, Marcus. She hate the new life, the hope that independence bring. She feed on the innocence, on the promise of a future she never had. The image of a shriveled, skinless hag, her eyes burning with an unholy hunger, filled my mind. I instinctively clutched the pen tighter, as if it could ward off the encroaching darkness. She the guardian of the waters, Marcus. Beautiful, yes, but fierce. She protect the secrets of the river, the gold that the Spanish left behind, and the souls that the river claim. On Independence Night, when the celebrations reach their peak, and the rivers run full with the rain, she rise, And if you disrespect the water, if you forget the sacrifices that flowed like a river to make us free, she pull you down, down to the depths where the forgotten lie. I thought of the joyous revelers, many of whom would be swimming in the rivers, cooling off from the heat of the day's festivities. The thought of the beautiful yet terrifying river Muma dragging unsuspecting souls into the murky depths was a stark contrast to the celebratory atmosphere outside. The rhythmic creak of Miss Adina's rocking chair seemed to mimic the gentle lapping of water, a deceptive sound that masked a hidden danger. As she spoke, the shadows in the room seemed to deepen, to coalesce into indistinct forms. I swore I could hear faint whispers, like the rustling of dry leaves, just beyond the range of my hearing. The air grew heavy, charged with an unseen presence. It was as if Miss Adina's words were not just descriptions, but invocations, drawing the very spirits she spoke of closer. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the suffocating silence. I wanted to run, to escape the oppressive atmosphere, but I was rooted to the spot, a captive audience, to the spectral parade she was conjuring. Day walk among us tonight, Marcus. Day watch, day remember, and day wait, for the day when true freedom come for all of us, living and dead. She closed her eyes, her breathing shallow. The candles on the altar, which had burned so fiercely, now flickered weakly, threatening to extinguish altogether. The metallic scent, the smell of damp earth, the faint whispers, they all lingered, a chilling testament to the unseen company we now kept. I knew then that Independence Day was not just a celebration of freedom, but a day of reckoning, a day when the past, with all its horrors, demanded to be acknowledged. And I, Marcus, was now a part of that reckoning, a witness to the unseen parade of Jamaica's haunted history. The night was far from over, and the true horror, I realized, had only just begun to unfold. As Miss Adina drifted into a shallow, restless sleep, her words continued to echo in my mind, a chilling symphony of warnings and forgotten tragedies. The room, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, its walls pressing in, alive with unseen presences. The flickering candlelight cast grotesque shadows that danced on the walls, transforming familiar objects into monstrous shapes. I tried to rationalize, to tell myself it was just the power of suggestion, the late hour, the old woman's vivid imagination. But the cold, the metallic scent, the whispers, they were too real, too pervasive to be dismissed. I decided to leave, to seek the comfort of the bustling Independence Day celebrations, to lose myself in the noise and the light. But as I rose, a faint, mournful wail, distinct from the distant sounds of revelry, pierced the oppressive silence. It was a sound that spoke of profound sorrow, of ancient pain, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of the old house. My heart leaped into my throat, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. Then a shadow detached itself from the deeper gloom in the corner of the room. It was tall, gaunt, and moved with an unnatural fluidity, like smoke given form. It glided towards the altar, its form coalescing into something vaguely human, yet utterly devoid of life. Its eyes, if it had any, were dark hollows, and its mouth, a gaping maw of silent agony. It was a duppy, undeniably, not the benevolent spirits my grandmother sometimes spoke of, but one of the restless, tormented souls Miss Adina had warned me about. I froze, every muscle in my body screaming to run, but fear had me in its icy grip. The duppy paused before the altar, its shadowy hand reaching out, not to the offerings, but to a faded photograph of a young woman, her smile bright and full of life. A fresh wave of that sickly, sweet, metallic scent washed over me, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was the duppy of someone who had suffered immensely, someone whose freedom had been stolen, even in death. The wail intensified, now accompanied by a faint, rhythmic clanking, growing louder, closer, the rolling calf. My blood ran cold. I could almost feel the ground vibrate with its approach, the air growing heavy with the stench of sulfur and burnt flesh. The duppy at the altar seemed to recoil, its shadowy form trembling, as if even it feared the monstrous beast. I pressed myself against the wall, desperate to become invisible, to disappear into the peeling paint and crumbling plaster. Suddenly, the front door, which I had carefully closed, burst open with a deafening crash, splintering wood and sending a gust of cold, damp air swirling into the room. The candles on the altar were extinguished, plunging the room into near total darkness, broken only by the faint, distant glow of the city lights filtering through the shattered doorway. And then I saw it, a hulking, bovine shape, its eyes glowing like twin coals, its body wreathed in an unholy fire. Chains, thick and rusted, dragged behind it, clanking with a sound that tore at the very fabric of my sanity. The rolling calf. It filled the doorway, its monstrous form silhouetted against the faint light, its breath a hot, putrid gust that reeked of decay and despair. It let out a guttural bellow, a sound that was more a roar of pure anguish and rage than that of any animal. The duppy at the altar shrieked, a soundless scream that reverberated in my mind, and then it dissipated, dissolving into the shadows from which it had come. The rolling calf took a step into the room, its fiery hooves scorching the ancient floorboards. I could feel the heat radiating from it, a searing wave that threatened to consume me, its glowing eyes fixed on me, and in that moment I knew I was its next target. It was not just a beast of folklore, it was a manifestation of the island's unresolved pain, its unacknowledged suffering, and on this night of false celebration, it had come to claim its due. I scrambled backward, my foot catching on a loose floorboard, sending me sprawling. The rolling calf advanced, its chains clanking, each step a hammer blow against the silence. I could feel its hot breath on my face, the acrid smell of burning flesh filling my nostrils. This was not a story. This was my reality. And as its monstrous shadow loomed over me, I knew that the true horror of Jamaica's Independence Day was not just in the past, but in the present. A terrifying reminder that some wounds never truly heal, and some spirits never truly rest. The celebration outside felt like a cruel mockery, a vibrant facade over a festering wound. And I, Marcus, was about to become another forgotten whisper in the long, terrifying history of the duppies' independence. The rolling calf's roar reverberated through the small room, a sound that tore at the very fabric of my being. Its fiery eyes, burning with an ancient malevolent hunger, were fixed on me. I could feel the heat radiating from its monstrous form, a searing wave that threatened to consume me. The stench of sulfur and burnt flesh filled my nostrils, making my stomach churn. This was no dream, no mere folklore. This was a living nightmare, a terrifying manifestation of the island's unacknowledged pain, its forgotten sacrifices. My mind, usually so analytical, so focused on historical facts, was now a whirlwind of primal fear. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape this suffocating terror. I scrambled backward, my hands flailing, searching for anything to push myself away. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic, the leg of Miss Adina's rocking chair. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, I pushed, sending the chair toppling with a loud clatter. The sound, though small, seemed to momentarily startle the beast, its glowing eyes flickering for a fraction of a second. That was all the time I needed. I lunged to my feet, my legs wobbly, and stumbled towards the shattered doorway. The air outside, though still heavy with the scent of damp earth and distant revelry, felt like a breath of fresh air compared to the suffocating inferno within the room. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The sound of the rolling calf's chains, clanking with a terrifying rhythm, spurred me on. Each clank was a hammer blow against my sanity, a reminder of the monstrous entity pursuing me. I burst out of the tenement yard, my heart hammering against my ribs, threatening to explode. The vibrant sounds of Independence Day celebrations, once a source of comfort, now felt like a cruel mockery. The distant music, the laughter, the shouts of joy, they were stark contrast to the terror that had just consumed me. I ran blindly, my feet pounding against the uneven pavement, my lungs burning with every ragged breath. The streets, usually bustling with people, were eerily deserted. Everyone, either at the parade or huddled around their televisions, celebrating a freedom I now questioned. I could still hear the clanking, closer now, echoing off the narrow alleyways. It was relentless, a terrifying symphony of pursuit. I risked a glance over my shoulder. In the distance, a fiery glow pulsed, growing larger, closer. The rolling calf was gaining on me. Its monstrous form, wreathed in an unholy fire, seemed to glide effortlessly over the ground, its chains leaving scorched marks on the asphalt. The air around it shimmered with heat, distorting the already eerie night. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. The city, my home, had become a labyrinth of shadows and terror. I ducked into a narrow alleyway, hoping to lose it, but the clanking followed, echoing off the brick walls, amplifying the sound until it felt like it was inside my head. I pressed myself against a grimy wall, my eyes wide with terror, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The alley was a dead end, a trap. I was cornered. The fiery glow intensified, filling the narrow space with an oppressive heat. The stench of sulfur was overwhelming, burning my nostrils. The clanking stopped. A terrifying silence descended, broken only by the frantic pounding of my own heart, and then a guttural snort right behind me. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. I felt the heat, the oppressive weight of its presence, the burning sensation on my skin. This was it. This was the price of freedom, the forgotten horror of independence. But then, a voice, faint and ethereal, whispered in my ear, "Remember the salt, Miss Adina." Her words, a distant echo from our conversation, cut through the fog of my terror. Salt, the old stories. Salt could ward off duppies, could break their hold. It was a desperate, foolish hope, but it was all I had. My hand instinctively went to my pocket, where I always carried a small pouch of sea salt, a superstitious habit inherited from my grandmother. With trembling fingers, I fumbled with the drawstring, spilling a handful of coarse grains onto the ground behind me. The moment the salt touched the earth, A deafening shriek tore through the night, a sound of pure agony and rage. The heat intensified, then abruptly receded. I opened my eyes. The alley was empty. The fiery glow was gone. The clanking had ceased. Only the lingering stench of sulfur and the faint, distant sounds of celebration remained. I stood there trembling, my body slick with sweat, my mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The rolling calf was gone, but the terror, the chilling realization of the unseen world that coexisted with our own, remained. I had come seeking forgotten histories, and I had found them not in dusty archives, but in the terrifying living presence of the duppies. Independence Day, I now understood, was not just a celebration of freedom from colonial rule, but a fragile truce with the spirits of the past, a day when the veil between worlds thinned, and the price of that freedom was demanded anew. I walked home that night, not with the triumphant spirit of a free man, but with the haunted eyes of one who had glimpsed the true cost of liberty, a cost paid in blood and tears, and in the restless souls that still roamed the land. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I would never look at Independence Day the same way again. The fireworks, the music, the laughter, they would forever be tainted by the memory of the clanking chains and the burning eyes of the rolling calf, a terrifying reminder of the shadows that still clung to our hard-won freedom. My quest for untold narratives had ended, but a new, terrifying chapter in my life had just begun, a chapter where the line between history and horror was irrevocably blurred. Remember, we're always watching